Hello folks, welcome back to DIY guitar making here at Eric Schaefer Guitars. Before we get started, let me just say, if you like what I do and you get a little something out of the lessons that I teach here, do me a favor and go to ericschaeferguitars.com and check out my structured online courses, or you can take a look at my upcoming dates for my acoustic guitar build workshops here in Burnville, Pennsylvania. Alright, so what are we talking about today? Well, I just got this top all carved out. I should say mostly carved out, because I still have to voice this top. I haven't done that yet. What I want to do first before I get into voicing is put the cap on the X-brace, that connecting sliver of wood that restores the full height to my X-brace at its most critical point. All right, so let's take a look at this way. I think we have to just establish a couple things as a foundation here first. So what the X-brace is essentially you have your two blanks of wood. This is how all my braces start out, just long rectangles like this. And on each piece, you're going to cut a notch, which reduces the height of that brace by about half. All right, so that would be our two notches there. And then these, the one brace gets flipped over like that, and the notches then bite into each other, okay? And so in that way, what you end up with is one of the braces retains its full height all the way across. I'm gonna hold this up really close because it's a very tight joint, so it's a little hard to see. But this brace right here retains its full height all the way across because the notch is on the bottom. Now the corresponding notch on this brace is on the top. And so that's why you can actually see the joint right there, because this brace gets cut down in half right at the most critical point, right at the center. And the X-brace is a load-bearing structure. It's the most important load-bearing structure, you might say, on the entire guitar. And right at the center, which is the most critical point of that load-bearing structure, we've reduced its height by half. Now, reducing it by half, structurally, why is that important? I mean, it might be obvious to you, but I think it always bears repeating that the cube rule applies here very well, the cube rule says this. So any structural element, this could be in architecture, it could be in guitars. We could be talking about a big, I don't know, truss on a bridge, or some sort of supporting member on a building like a church or something like that. And that beam gets most of its strength by a factor of 3. I'm not sure if factor is the right word, but by a cube function, let's say. By a cube function, it gets its strength from its height and not its width, okay? And that is why all of these braces that you see down here, they're all tall and skinny and not short and wide, okay? Transverse bar is a little bit of an exception, because the transverse bar is actually just extra huge and beefy, because it's not really a part of the vibrational footprint of the top, so it's not where all of our acoustic considerations of light and stiff come into play. This you can think of as just a barrier that delineates the end of our vibrational footprint, much in the same way that the sides tell us where the vibrational footprint ends, okay? All right, so that's our vibrational footprint. This is the most critical part structurally. And what we don't want to do is just leave that undercut brace, which is this one right here, the way that it is, because, you know, then, well, we just don't want to leave it that way. I can make this a lot more obvious for you guys by simply showing you a more commercially manufactured top, which I keep this around just for demonstration purposes here. And you can see a much more visible gap here, which by the way is because in a commercial environment, for the sake of expediency, they pre-radius the braces and then glue them down, and then they'll, you know, carve the tapers and all of that. When I make my guitars, and a lot of solo boutique builders, I just glue down blanks like this. So they're, again, like I said before, just long rectangles. And then I do all the carving in place, which gives me the ability to essentially leave this little boxed off area right here at the center of the X that isn't radiused, so that I can get a really nice clean joint there. And then we're just going to put a sliver of wood right over the top to reconnect and restore the full height of this weakened piece. Because I can even feel, by the way, if I take this and flex the X brace, which is a part of voicing that I always like to do, but if I do this before that cap goes on there, when I flex this side of the X brace, I can tell the difference. There's a, it's not huge, but there's a noticeable difference because this brace is cut down by half. So the other brace is much stiffer than the one that's cut down by half. In a production environment, when you have these pre-radiused braces, one thing you'll see a lot is this either cheesecloth, or I've heard the same material that is used to for cleaning patches for rifle bores. And you know what? I don't believe that really restores. I mean, you were talking about cheesecloth here, not a piece of wood. I don't believe that really restores the full structural integrity. It more so just covers over the gap. And if you get a split in the brace, that glue and cheesecloth will prevent a catastrophic split from spreading. But hey, that's not the only reason why we want to create a bridge across that gap. We also want to restore that strength so that both of your X braces have the same degree of flexibility, rather than one being more flexible than the other. So I've always used just a small sliver of wood like this. This is just an offcut of spruce. It could literally be a scrap from the brace carving process, but this is a little bit more stout than just a tiny scrap. So Irvin Samaji, who I greatly respect, he, if you're in the lutherie world, you probably know who Irvin Samaji is. If you're just a guitar player, you probably don't know his name. But within the world of luthiers, at least, he's well-known, well-respected, and he's written a number of publications on very technical aspects of guitar making. Anyway, he calls this the most important gram of wood in the entire guitar. And he means that both structurally and acoustically, again, because it restores stiffness to that half of the X brace. So I've always used this little sliver of wood, no particular reason. I'm actually going to start using ebony, a hardwood, to brace over this cap, just because it is such an important load-bearing spot that I think a tiny piece of hardwood there is actually appropriate. I've never had an issue with these, by the way. I'm not saying that, you know, these have split or failed, but just sometimes you think about these things and you make improvements just based on your speculation about what could happen. So anyway, I'm going to switch to hardwood at this point. I think I can take the hit as far as the extra added weight. I mean, because we're talking about the difference between, I don't know, maybe 1 gram of wood and 2 grams. Still not a big deal. So anyway, very important piece of wood. And we're going to go ahead and cap this. Now, when I say this, this is just my demo guitar. We're capping this. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Oh, and by the way, this, I don't know if you can see that. That's the cheesecloth that I'm talking about. So this is an old Ibanez guitar that I cut in half. Yeah, so that's common in production, but it's not ideal, and it's not what we're going to do. You always want to make sure that this area is flat, of course. So I'm just going to take a 220 grit block and just make tiny little up and down motions right on that spot, because it's actually very hard when you have a very small surface like this. It's very hard to actually get it flat, rather than if you get a little too aggressive with your motion, you'll end up rounding over and getting more like a hill than a flat surface. I can kind of check the flatness just by placing the ebony down. And yep, it doesn't rock on there, so that's nice and flat. All right, because I'm using ebony, I'm going to clean this surface with mineral spirits to remove any oils that are present at the surface. Probably not super necessary here because it's such a small piece, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then follow that up with naphtha to remove the mineral spirits. And then the naphtha will just wick away and evaporate on its own. Okay, now this rag goes in the wood stove so it doesn't spontaneously combust. And we are ready to glue this down. Now you can glue this in the Go Bar deck, but also I'll show you a different way of doing it that's very simple. Just using tape. So I apply my glue, place it over the joint. Now, of course, make sure you're putting it on the right part of it. It's doing nothing if I place it on this brace, and it's doing everything if I place it over the gap on this brace. So first I'm just going to set this a little bit, which means I'm just going to hold it in place until it stops swimming. Now I'm going to take a piece of tape, and first I'm just going to press it onto the side of the brace like that. And then I can take the tape and ratchet, pulling with some pressure here. That's what I mean by ratchet it over the top. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Place this on the side of the brace. Nice and good so it doesn't pop off when I ratchet over the top. And then I'm just going to take this and ratchet that over the top. You should be able to see some tension at the edges of the tape. It should look a little taut, almost like the tape wants to tear at those corners. And that's how you know you're actually getting some down pressure from the tape, rather than just lazily rolling the tape over the patch. That's not going to give you any down pressure whatsoever. The tape might as well not be there if you're doing that. So place it on the side, ratchet over. Okay. And now, the reason I like doing it this way, by the way, instead of the Go Bar deck, is simply for expediency. We talked about expediency with what companies do when they radius their braces. I do this for expediency because I can continue to work on the guitar. I can, if I hadn't you know, profiled some of these braces. I could keep doing that. I could clean things up. I wouldn't necessarily voice it yet because I don't like that tape being on there when I'm flexing or tapping. But yeah, I can essentially keep working on this top if you do it this way. All right, so that's it. I just wanted to show you guys that. I wanted to talk about the importance of this tiny, tiny piece of wood. And hopefully I impressed that upon you. And I appreciate you guys watching. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.